Marchese.
Yes.
I have Councilor Simonelli. Yeah. We have 3 members present. We do have quorum.
Please stand and salute the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first piece of business is a ordinance offered by Council Sani to amend section 13-7 of the revised ordinance of the city of Everett, disturbing the peace.
Chief Mazie called me this evening, earlier. I have not, got back to him because it was 5:45, so, he was gonna try to make it. So let's, hold this over to, see if he shows up. So let's lay it over for a moment until he,
So we have this motion laid, we're laying the table. Motion made to lay in the table to later tonight, later in the meeting.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
All right, item number 2. This is a resolution offered by Council Peter Napolitano and Michael Marchese that the awning ordinance be reviewed for amendments. And
Council Marchese?
As you know, we don't have a ordinance for the awning, right, Peter? If I could, that's,
Yes, Council Napolitano?
Thank you. I'm starting to work on the rules, which we know are not actually binding. I've decided doing some research with a few communities that do have a more stricter awning agenda. Right now, I'm waiting on some information back from one of them, so I'm not prepared right now to be able to do anything more than to modify our rules, which, seeing as they're not binding, it doesn't really accomplish anything. So I'd like to hold this over until our next meeting. I do apologize, it was held over from the last meeting, but I'm looking for some pieces to really give us some direction. 2 of these communities have been doing this for a number of years, so I just want to make sure that we've covered all the possibilities. Okay? Melrose, I looked in there a little bit, but no, there's a little further out. You know, Medford had a very restricted program. My concerns with their program is that it actually discouraged business, and they've had their program going almost 20 years. So I'm looking at a few different things to see what's going to be a better fit for us.
Yep.
So that would be my request, is to request further time on this particular item.
And I agree with Peter, and I think it's very important that we get this work done on this, to get some kind of, unified look in the city of Everett. I mean, like I said, we've been lucky, people are just looking for like black and red, and we haven't had any of those yellow and greens, but, Chestnut Street, the guy turned around and painted it green on the corner. I mean, see, I could just set the whole city back that color there. So I think we should get ourselves 3 colors, which we'll accept. And every time, we do someone apply for it and see if it goes with what's in that area. And we gave a few black ones, I think, like last week. Yeah. I mean, and even I noticed down on Ferry Street, there's a corner place that put up awnings. I know there's no permit to put the awnings up, but they put them up anyhow. And they look nice, but, at least they should, come through us before they put them up there. But, Pete, what do you want to do?
Okay, we're gonna.
A second?
Motion to request further time for the next meeting. All in favor?
Aye?
The ayes have it. Can we please take item 1?
Motion made to read. Number 1.
We have a motion?
A motion to take number 1 off the
Take item
table.
1 off the table. All in
Second?
favor?
Aye?
The ayes have it. Please read item 1.
item number 1, this is the disturbing the peace ordinance.
I'd like to make a motion to invite Chief Mazie and Mayor's Chief of Staff, Melissa.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Can you please just state your name?
Melissa Rodriguez, Mayor Jean Maria's Chief of Staff.
Good evening, Steve Mazie, Chief of Police.
This piece here that I'm putting together, I was trying to add a little more to it for the police department, because I had a lot of complaints that when neighbors with loud noise, music, and they were afraid to call the police because they felt they were gonna be retaliated from their neighbors or something like that. So I wanted to be able, if the police were driving by and they heard a loud excessive noises in people's homes or areas or the backyard, that they can just go up and say, hey, look, you gotta turn the music down, or, you know, it's a little bit, you know, when you're hearing it down on Everett Street and you get it on Main Street, it's a little bit too loud. So we're trying to find out if you have a sound level meters, if they're using them, if they have them or not.
Okay, so we have not been using the meters. We haven't had great success with them. And I don't know if it's based off of, I mean, what I've found is if you have loud noise, consistent loud noise in a small confined area, they're great, but some of the noise complaints that we're talking about, we've had anything from like air conditioning units to someone could say, for example, a complaint of loud music where the meter's not picking up as in violation. So what we instituted last summer on loud parties, for example, we have a new protocol where if we get called to a loud party and it's before 11 p.m., we go there, we warn them to keep the music down. If we get called back there for a second time, the party's over. If we get called to for a complaint on loud noise and it's after 11, the party's over. So one time and it's done. That's worked a little better this summer. Regarding disturbing the peace, though, so just so people are clear and understand the law, disturbing the peace under state statute, we need someone's peace to be disturbed besides ours. It can't be the police officers' peace can't be disturbed. So we need people, a caller, or if we have multiple callers, they don't have to be named. So if the phone's ringing off the hook at the 911 center and there's 5, 6, 7 neighbors calling, that's sufficient. But if we have someone calling and it doesn't want to cooperate in terms of giving who they are, that can be a little problematic. The other thing is there's been a movement over the last number of years to have police officers kind of lay off using the statute of disturbing the peace, only because many courts across the state believe that it's been abused and used in the wrong manner. So we have to be, you know, and this whole has to go, you know, to the idea of procedural justice. People don't want to be left with the impression that we're abusing our power by using a statute like disturbing the peace just because we don't like something that's going on. So we try to balance, obviously we want peaceful neighborhoods, while at the same time using the tools that we have without abusing it. I mean, there was a movement to remove the law from the books at one point a few years ago. So that's basically where we stand and how we handle them right now.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for you, the chief. What is the procedure for a dog barking? Is there a certain length they can bark, or how does that work?
No, I mean, it's really, you know, obviously it's up to the individual who's, you know, listening to the noise. I mean, it doesn't have to be barking for so many hours. I mean, you know, to me, what's reasonable? And that's a standard we try to apply when officers go out to scenes. And so if it's you know, tonight, for example, a Monday night at 1 o'clock in the morning, if we have a dog barking excessively all night, that's unacceptable. Something needs to be done about it. If it's at 6 o'clock in the evening, you know, some people are going to say, well, it's 6 o'clock in the evening. I mean, a dog can bark. He's a dog. You know what I'm saying?
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to really put an hour gauge on a dog barking. Some people do it just to do it. They leave them out there.
Sure. Well, there's no doubt there's some irresponsible
It happens all the time.
owners. We've had complaints. People call us at 4 o'clock in the afternoon complaining of the music's too loud. You know, 4 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, that's acceptable. I mean, most people are going to say, what's wrong with playing music at 4 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon? Some people don't like the type of music that might be played. I mean, we don't get into the, you know, what station or type of music people are listening to.
Another question, please. Say if the dog is barking, how would you have to be there to, tell the owners to come down, or?
Well, we'd have to go. I mean, obviously, we would need a call for service to show up unless we came across it ourselves. But we would contact the owner, try to have the dog taken in. I mean, you'd be surprised. Some of these cases, we show up and there's no owner there. I mean, they'll leave the dog outside, and there's no owner to be found. But I don't know if that's, I mean, offhand, I mean, I don't have that data on me right now. I'd be curious to see what the calls for service are on barking dogs right now.
But has it been quieter over the years, or as far as the dogs going?
Well, I will say overall, the dog owners have been more responsible, I think, in these more recent years than years past. They've gotten better. We have less dogs, I think, running our streets. We have a lot more people picking up after the dogs. For example,
Yeah.
I walked a section of the city today, just checking out some areas, and I looked in the barrels, and a lot of the barrels were full
It seems like having the little
of dogs.
baggie
Yeah, they get their bags, they're picking up. So I see people being a little more responsible. Are they all responsible? No, but, you know, it's hard to get 100% compliance.
Okay, thank you.
Council Napolitano?
Thank you. Okay, I definitely understand the issue with the state and trying to remove the piece off. You know, the two-edged sword is that a police officer's experience and judgment is important, but I can also understand where the concerns would be that they fall under the trap of being claimed of being accused of being abusive.
Sure.
And that's something I can appreciate as all of our law enforcement officials have to be cognizant
Yep.
of. You're as much of a target as you are as an enforcer of the law in that regard. But the thing only thing I'm concerned with is that, and I worked on the original sound ordinance, and this is with the predecessor. You know, the thing was that the question we had was that we needed some definitive measure of determination, so the officers would not be left trying to figure out whether, you know, this person thinks, you know, the music's too loud, the other person thinks the music's not too loud. I'm a little disappointed we've moved away from that because we weren't aware that there's been any issues with the sound equipment as you described. So I'm just concerned with how do we then, what is it that we tell our residents? They definitely need to step forward because without
Sure.
somebody putting themselves on the books that they're calling about this, they're leaving it for you to do that, and that's not right.
So, no, I think we've had better success when we basically drew a line in the sand last summer on if we get a call before 11, we try to warn them. I mean, because you know, you run the gamut of anything from you know, we hit different seasons, you know, in any time of the year. Graduation parties, proms, you know, the whole 9 yards, birthday parties, et cetera. So, I mean, do we want to go in every graduation party and you know, shut them down and throw, you know, you could go in the backyard and it's all family members. It could be any one of our families in there having a good time. Most people, and what we do encourage people that call us for advice is to contact all your neighbors and let them know you're going to have a party to see if they'll gain acceptance for the party and you'll have no problems. So that's worked well when neighbors do that. But if they call, if neighbors call on a loud party, but it's excessive noise, music, doesn't matter. Could be just a mass of people. If they call before 11, we go there. We're giving them one warning. If we get called back, party's over. We don't care what kind of party it is or anything. If we get called back second time, it's over. So that's the standard. We didn't do that before. We were sometimes going back to parties 2-3 times, trying to say, you know, trying to be decent people. Hey, enjoy yourself, but quiet it down. But some don't get that message. And if it's a first-time caller and it's after 11, the party's over.
The communities had a reasonable person standard in the language that we gave you. I think Malden and I want to say Boston both had it was just a reasonable person standard. They had moved away from the machines. And our nuisance ordinance.
Yeah, the problem with the machines is they're not picking up. You could call for some noise, and we go out there with a machine, and the machine it's not measuring enough for a violation. Your piece is still being disturbed, but now it's like, okay, we don't have a violation. So I think in the warmer months, most of the noise complaints we get are loud parties. I don't know if you would agree or disagree on that. I mean,
I get them right in my own neighborhood.
I think it's
But
loud parties.
I'll say one thing about the people who do that is that in my neighborhood, 11 o'clock, we note that music goes right off. So they're aware of the time frames and respecting the neighborhood. So as a result, you know,
That's-
we even though it's not my type of music, but, you know,
Yeah.
I can accept it because they're being responsible with it.
I will say this too, in the last number of years, we're seeing more people register for block parties with us. Instead of just having a party on their own without even telling us, in the last 4 or 5 years, people have been very, very good, and so people are showing up to get a permit to hold a block party, and they'll have a list of all their neighbors with signatures, the addresses. That has gotten a lot better, and then we enter that into our digital roll call. So come like this Saturday night, we know there's 2 block parties, and these are the addresses, and the sector cars are responsible going by checking on them. We put ending time, if they're not early day parties, we put ending times on them, and I can tell you, none of them are after 11. I mean, most of them are stopping 9, 10 o'clock at nighttime. So I think people are getting conditioned to be more respectful and follow kind of like this procedure we've been going with. If not, they're gonna have problems. I mean, do we arrest people still for disturbing the peace? The answer is yes, we do. As a matter of fact, I look out. I thought about last week or 2 weeks ago, we had 2 arrests for disturbing the peace. Those kind of jump out at me, and I check them right away to see, to make sure that we're using the law judiciously. And in those 2 cases I just saw recently, we are. So we try to be reasonable on this, and we respect that. We ask people to be respectful of their neighbors. We don't want parties spiraling out of control. We've had it happen before, and nothing good happens as a result.
Thank you, that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilman Casey?
Just to clarify what we're talking about today, what do you really want to add on? Is it just about these certain hours? It says like 6 PM to 7 o'clock in the morning. Cynthia, what are you actually
I was
looking
looking
for?
to remove the decimal, the machine, the level meter
Yep.
machine, and then the hours, and then giving the police more opportunity to be able to,
Make your own judgment?
yes, and because a lot of people where we have a diverse city now, and it's changing, and people are afraid of their neighbors because they don't know who they are, and some people have been threatened, by making a call, and their neighbor knows it's them, and, they get into fights. So this way, the police, if they can hear it from a street away and they're driving, they can at least stop and say, look, you need to turn it down, I can hear it up on Main Street or Broadway, and it's 3 streets away, just to help them, or even cars. People putting their music on so loud in a car, and they go into a store and they're leaving it on, and it's 3, houses across the street. It's disturbing those neighbors. So this way it gives the police some more tools to work with without a phone call. That's what I was trying to do.
See, didn't we amend any of these laws a long time ago? I believe in the 90s and the beginning when it was really,
They've been amended a few times over the years, but I think it's really a matter of getting people to understand what's expected of them, and what they can do and not do. And like I said, I think it's getting better. A number of years back, a lot of you remember, some of our biggest noise complaints, and we had no solution, and trust me, officers struggled with it. The biggest noise complaints were from churches. We're going there, and, are we going to start locking up people coming out of a church session for disturbing the peace? And that's where push came to shove. We got close to doing that. Here we are ready to grab pastors who are celebrating masses, et cetera. So that's gotten a lot better. I mean, and that took a lot of sitting down, saying, hey, this is what the rules are, what's acceptable and not acceptable. Is it perfect? I mean, in the warm weather, we're going to have periods where there's some of these noise complaints. Somebody's going to come away probably unhappy. We're not going to solve them to everyone's satisfaction, but I think we've gotten better at them. I like the new practice we put in place on how we're handling parties. That seems to be working much better. And if it's a big party, I'll tell you this, we do send, they all go to make sure it's done in a peaceful manner and people leave peacefully.
It's funny because a lot of the houses now are turning over and there's younger people living there, especially I am. All of a sudden I became like the oldest guy in the neighborhood all of a sudden. And I'm telling you, there's parties every night. Also, 11 o'clock, it's done. They're very respectful in the neighborhood. They let it rip, but I mean, it doesn't bother me. But I mean, there could be 10 parties out of 12 houses, I'll sum along, and, but it's nothing that goes on all night long, especially in the Elsie area where I am.
Well, I guess, let me ask you guys, I mean, do you think that's a reasonable time in the summer months, 11 o'clock-ish? Does that sound reasonable?
Friday and Saturday, I'd say.
Weekend nights?
No, 'cause people work.
Working, yeah.
Maybe 10 for the weekday, would be better.
Okay. I mean, that's something we can adapt. I mean, we can change our procedure going into next summer. I don't know if it's a big problem right now going into the fall, into the winter here, months. But next summer, I mean, that's something we can look at during the week. Guys, it's 10 o'clock. I think you will find that a small percentage of people, you may get calls saying, hey, that's kind of, too early to be cutting off celebrations. I mean, you might get some of those same calls of the same people saying it's
It's too late.
it's too late, it's too late, it's too early. I mean, we try to find that happy medium, and that's why we leave some of the discretion up to the officers, with the exception now, that second callback, party's over.
I have a question. Do
Sure.
you give tickets out after a third time, when they don't stop and you're out there again, do we give tickets or arrests at all?
We have arrested people for disturbing the peace, yes. We try not to go that route, but some people have been cited. It's more the property owner gets cited. But I don't think if we're going back the second time, like I said, the party's over. We're not going back a third time.
The other question is, if we remove because we're not using it, the level meters out of the ordinance, would that be better for you because we're not using it? And giving you some other type of wording in here so we can change it?
Does it hurt I mean,
Yeah, if you're not using it, people will say, I didn't see you using it when you told me this. Am I right?
yeah, but I'm just saying, though, is it something I mean, who knows, as the city changes and develops, I mean, there may be cases where the meter might be helpful. I don't know, do we keep it on the books for a little longer?
Keep it on and add something else with it?
That's what I'm saying, you could add something else. Once you take it out, though, it's out.
Councilor Napolitano?
Is there somebody from code enforcement on duty 24/7?
No, there's a weekend staffer, but they're not on 24/7. They're on we have a Friday, Saturday person that's scheduled over the weekend.
How late in the evening are they out there?
Well, they're still on now, up till 7:30
Okay.
on Mondays and Thursdays. We have people 7:30 Mondays and Thursdays. Some of them start early, so they start at like 6 instead of because they get the trash route. So they all have staggered hours. But there's not someone around 11 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night.
The reason I'm asking is that perhaps a possibility in keeping it in the ordinances would be to move the responsibility of verifying sound decibels to code enforcement. Department gets a response, you're in a situation where you may decide that you want to take a reading, contact code enforcement, they come down and set it up. This way you've got one unit making sure that the equipment is properly calibrated, is properly functioning. You guys have enough on your plate, and I don't think that carrying around, keeping the sound equipment tuned up is equal standing as some of the other responsibilities you do just in the day-to-day work.
Do we have
So I'm just throwing that out as an idea.
Well, we're constantly, I don't know if those, so we've constantly upgraded those. I don't think the sound equipment is very expensive to begin with, and we try to, every few years, upgrade it anyways. I mean, I would keep equipment on hand. It's really a matter of, because the other thing is, I don't know, I mean, if they're staffing-wise, if code enforcement isn't out late night, that's where these calls
That's
are
the question.
coming in. I mean, I have no problem doing it. We just don't capture, when we've used them, we don't capture the violations. And so some people end up disappointed. And it very well may be, in their mind, it's disturbing them, and it could be, but it's just not gonna register on the meter.
They've toned it down since the initial complaint.
Yeah.
And, the officer coming down to a little different situation.
I mean, it's not like we have tools to deal with it. I mean, we have the state statute. Like I said, we just try to be careful and make sure there's judicious use in it. I just don't want to see or be pressuring officers to be, bringing everyone out and disturbing these peace calls on every time there's a party over, 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. It's reserved for the worst of the worst, or someone who repeatedly doesn't listen to the instructions and orders to quiet down. And, I mean, I can run some numbers and try to get some feedback to see what we had, for example, volume allowed parties fire this summer. I can give you some feedback at a future meeting, just to give you a rough idea what happened this past summer.
I don't think it would hurt you to add OR language, though. I mean, it could be the decimal machine or
Well,
reasonable
yeah.
person standard. So you could use either standard.
Council Simonelli?
Yeah, I'll have a question. Now, this meter thing, I really don't think it's really, it does anything positive, because, you might have a reading on this machine, you're gonna show this person, see what, they wouldn't understand it, first of all, and would you give them a ticket if they were over the limit?
Well, that's what it's supposed, designed for.
But you have to be there with the plan.
Correct.
It's hard, it's gotta happen.
I mean, it's good if you were standing on a street corner with a meter and a car pulled up at a red light and had, you know, blaring music with some huge amps in the car, you'd get a hit on it. But it's a rarity that an officer's standing on the street corner with a meter ready to rock and roll.
I don't know. Okay, thank you.
Council Napolitano?
Yeah, I just want to throw a little history on how this ordinance originally came about. We were having a significant problem, I'm talking 15 years ago, down in South Everett, where we had trucking companies that were bringing in containers from the ships 2, 3, 4 a.m. in the morning, banging them together, pushing them in closely. So the problem we were having at the time in trying to enforce it was we had no way of being able to determine, you know, how loud it was going. And that's where we got some direction from one of the previous chiefs. I don't recall which who it was. I'm not sure at what point it was. But and that's how this originally came about. Then, of course, parties and other stuff got thrown into it, and the ordinance evolved into something much bigger. But originally, the intent with this was to be able to protect quieter neighborhoods that were getting loud, excessive noise from commercial properties nearby, and businesses that were not expected to be operating at those hours in the morning at that sound level. So that's how it originally answered. That was probably more for my colleagues' benefit. They asked the question. But again, I have no problem with the process that you're going through. I mean, you're basically giving them a warning. It's cordial. It's keeping the community connection
Yep.
between yourselves, your officers, and the people having the party. And then the ordinance is there for those that don't get it.
Yep. So the scenario you gave, though, that is one area that we still struggle with on occasion is commercial industry that abuts some of the smaller neighborhoods. But technically, I think there's enough in the ordinances. People aren't supposed to be doing deliveries at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, or letting trucks idle, et cetera. So we try to, it's the cat and mouse game sometimes, but those are tough as well to handle.
That's all. I just wanted to add that in.
I would like to lay this over and work with Melissa to have some wording in it, language, keeping in the meter and then adding or in there with some language. And then also, if the chief can, you don't have to come back up, but if you want to.
I'll send you some info.
Send us some
Absolutely,
information. And
from
also,
the
if you
summer.
can also see about the barking dogs for Council Simonelli, so he can have some feedback about how many calls you got maybe in the last few months
Sure.
over the summer.
I'll do it, yeah. Yep.
All right, all in favor?
The motion made, what, to lay on the table
Second.
and
Yes.
get some results? Is that what the motion is?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make the front,
All in
second.
favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Item number 3, this is a order by Council John Hill. Accepted Mass General Law, Chapter 51, Section 16A, creating an election commission.
Can we make a motion to invite Council Hanlon? All in favor?
Low seat. Wow, must be a big guy sitting in this chair. Madam Chairman, members of the commission, I want to start this off by just telling you, what I think will be needed to make effective this change, and then I want to tell you why we need to do this, okay? So first of all, I'm just going to start off by also John, so you don't have to write everything down. Okay, so We would need an election commission. We need like members that would be there, that would be the election commissioners, 3, 5, or 7 of them, whatever we decided we wanted to be. We need a chair, an assistant chair, and a secretary, plus some office workers. The chair would be in the chair for 3 years. Salaries would be depending on the number of hours worked for the members, but not all the members would be full-time. The office staff salaries would be set at the Everett standard for office workers. Those workers will come from the clerk's office. So we're not talking about hiring 2 new people, but we're talking about hiring the commissioners. Requirements for the office, of course, will be office phone, computers, office equipment, files, desk, chairs, and so forth. These people will be approved by the mayor and not by the city clerk, because this will no longer be a function of the city clerk, it'll be a function of the mayor's office. Hours work will have to be evaluated to find out what hours are going to be worked. Workers must be Everett citizens and registered voters. We have to provide them with training, authority, and it has to be covered by the Massachusetts general law. We would need, the election commission would have to obtain all the related materials for elections from the city clerk and the state elections division. They need to take control of the election clerks, wardens, tellers, and inspectors, hiring and training them. This is during the actually voting periods. Our training will be involved in all elections. They need to know recounts, setups, and trainings. The staff would be a 3/4 full-time or part-time during elections and recounts. They would be in charge of all election materials, setup of all voting machines and voting equipment, know how to program voting computers, know voting regulations. They have to do the street listings. They have to do voter list to office holders, voter list and street listings to candidates, work with the State Division of Elections, census of the city, campaign finance, call for elections, primaries, and preliminaries, determine results of votings, order to set up polling locations. Need to provide statistics for the state, work with vendors on voting cards, ballots, and equipment, responsible for computing voting cards, absentee ballot processing, nomination documents, filing results and history records, creating election day forms, and reporting documents. The city clerk would only be required to do, provide storage and record keeping, and also provide the initial training of these people. After that, they train people on their own. And of course, every time there are, clerks meetings and election division meetings statewide, they go to these things and they become trained over there themselves. Plus, we'd probably have the election division here training the people that we need. So, why are we going into this? What's the big deal for doing what we're doing now, but with commissioners instead of the city clerk's office? It's coming down very shortly that there will be same-day registrations, and that means same-day voting, and that means same-day kinds of forms. So you need a form for someone to come in to register, you need a form for them to take down to the voting precinct, and you need a form for the voting precinct for them to sign that, yeah, this is the person that signed all these documents. Talk about 3 new forms. It's a new process for doing this, but same-day registration. They come in at 4 o'clock, they say, I want to vote, but where do you live? I just moved into Everett. And we have to let them do that. But when they get down to the voting places, they have to sign a documentation that say they swear or affirm that this is the true statement. So we have to work out on that. The next thing that's going to be really, really important is that there's going to be 10-day voting prior to the actually voting day. So the polls will be open. I would imagine the poll would be open just in the clerk's office, rather than having all the polls open all the way around. But you can come in and vote for any reason whatsoever. Normally if you're going to do an absentee ballot or vote over the counter, it's because of 3 things. You're not going to be in the city, poor health, or religious beliefs. That's the only reason that you can vote by absentee ballot. And but now, these 10 days, any one of us can just walk in and say, I want to vote because I'm going to be busy on Election Day campaigning. And you can do that. It's very, very legal. They will be required to produce a heck of a lot more statistics while this thing gets up and running, because I know the state is going to know what happened well, not only Everett, but what happened in every municipality in the Commonwealth. And we need new and a different kind of reports, not just the reports that they're doing, but which we supply to them. It's going to need new reports. These are things that they're going to, how many people actually came and voted during the 10 days? How many people came and voted same-day registration? Where did they come from? Where did we check them out? We can't check them out until like the next day or a couple of days thereafter. We'll be contacting the state, because everybody now that registers is reported to the state. And they're going to have to report it too. And if they're wrong, they're going to come back to us and say, well, why didn't you do that? But it's all in the training. Everything will be in the training of these commissioners. Okay, and there will be new polling and results requirements before and after the elections, before and after the registration, before and after the 10-day voting. This is all gonna be brand new, and you know, you can't expect the clerk's office to do this. It's gotta, I mean, if you want them to hire them, let them hire 5 more people, that would be fine. But it doesn't belong in the clerk's office anymore. A lot of cities and towns have election commissions, and they don't, clerk's office don't get involved with the elections. The voting for these 10 days, is it going, we don't know yet, is it going to include Saturday and Sunday? Because it says 10 days before the voting. You have 10 days. Does that include Saturdays and Sundays? If not, you've got to go back maybe another 4 days to cover the weekends. We don't know. Are the hours going to be from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m.? Because that's what the normal voting hours are. And if people want to vote these days, they may have to come and do that normally. What happens in Everett where we have different hours, and what happens when we're closed on Friday? And not only Everett, many municipalities are closed on Fridays. So what's going to happen? Do we have to have someone stay open or whatever? But that should, this whole thing should now go into the election commissions. And they're the ones who should handle it, and it shouldn't be up to the staff of the clerk's office to not, where they're going up and down. And plus, they have to do the stuff that they do all day long. So it's just going to be an extremely, extremely complicated thing for them to do. And those are the reasons that I want to do this. I mean, I've been down there. I know what it is on election day, and it's like pulling your hair out. And now they're going to do this thing, you know, 10 days beforehand, or maybe whatever it is, I don't know. It's going to be very, very complicated. So I'm asking that we approve that, what is it, Mass General Law, Chapter 51, Section 16A, to create that thing. And then it would be up to the mayor to, okay, say, all right, we'll do it, and we'll appoint so many people, and whatever he wants to do, it'll be in his ballpark.
Council Napolitano?
Thank you. I've got a few questions. First of all, I did read on the, with the state. I don't have a problem with it. I understand the clerk's office is, you know, it's nuts during election year, and it needs to definitely be changed. I have no question in my mind there. So I'm in agreement with that. But I do have a few questions. First of all, regarding elections, what's the Register of Voters' responsibilities, both presently and in this election?
Presently, what they do, anyone that goes to the polling places on election days and says, you know, I need to vote, and we say, okay, and we look, you're not on the list.
Right.
Well, they have to be on the list because they voted last year. But no, well, you're not on the list anymore. Well, why is that? We don't know. The Register of Voters, that's where they get involved in that, you know. Someone coming along and saying that they want to register today, or whatever the case is going to be, it'll be up to the Registrar of Voters office, okay? Registrar of Voters office, they are the ones that say who the voters are. And when you go to the polls and I've brought people into the polls and say, come on, okay, get down to vote. And they say, okay, and you get down there, and they're not registered. So now you wind up chasing them around, you get back up this, and especially if it's late in the day, when they want to vote, and you know, they want to go at 5 o'clock at night. If it's early in the day, we can give a form to fill up, they can bring it up to the Registrar of Voters. The Registrar of Voters can say, okay, you're registered, take this back to the polling places, and they'll allow you to vote. But at 5 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock at night, they want to register, and it becomes a problem. You know, you got to get back to them and back down to register again, or you take care of it by phone, if it's a possibility. Sometimes people will take, and they say, yeah, I voted the last time, but what they're talking about is they voted at the last presidential election, and they think that they're still they're still around, but they're not on the current list because they haven't voted.
Hmm?
And so they have to get reestablished onto the current list.
Or if they haven't filled out the census,
Right,
they're
oh,
removed
yeah,
that
if
way
they're
as
not
well.
on the census, that
But
right
I
there.
guess my question is that, so the registrar has absolutely nothing along to do with the actual election itself,
The-
other than making sure people are registered.
That's the truth, that's right.
Okay. And, you know, I'm again, this isn't for any other reason, but, you know, we're taking, I mean, I would feel more comfortable with appointees being from a more neutral source. You know, I've never had an issue with the clerk's office either, you know, in running there because, and it's not to insinuate anything, but it's all about keeping everything above board. You know, when you have an elected official appointing people to the elected committee, in some minds, that suggests the possibility that there could be some influence by anybody. And I'd feel more comfortably with those people being appointed by the clerk or by the Register of Voters, something that is not being appointed by an elected official, because people are people.
I
you know.
understand, you know, I agree with you, Peter, I really do. However, you're gonna have the clerk involved by appointing the commissioners, and that's now getting him involved. You don't wanna do that.
But what's his involvement beyond that? There isn't.
None.
Okay,
None whatsoever.
so only asking about one function, nothing more. Okay, so appointing 4 people, I don't think is as critical, just to ensure that everything is above board, especially if the commissioners are gonna take it from there and run with the ball. That's all. That's the only thing I'm bringing that up
And I
at.
think when you do the commissions, just so you'll know, there's gotta be like 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, if there's 4 of them. Or if there's 5
No
of them.
independents?
Huh?
No independents?
No, I don't know.
It just can't be more than 2 of any one party.
Okay, that's fine.
So, and we'd have to look at chapter 51 to see if the clerk can do it, or if it says that the mayor will definitely do it. You know what that says, Michael?
Yeah, if, I mean, yeah.
Why don't we invite
Please.
you don't mind.
So
Mr.
moved.
Matarazzo?
Should I have sat up there?
It's okay.
It's the appointee, what happens at the very beginning is the registrar of voters become the election commission. Until their terms, until they resign or their terms are up.
Is there a commission right now?
Yes. There is a registrar of voters, yes.
And there is no commission?
No, there is no commission. There's the registrar of voters.
And who is the registrar of voters?
Registrar of voters is, and I always get the 2 sisters mixed, Ann LeConte? Is it Ann LeConte or Marie LeConte?
And what, how many?
Anyhow,
How many are there?
Ursulia Matarazzo, Ann LeConte, and Scott Cummings.
Are there
And
4
I'm
of
the
them?
4th member. They
Okay.
made me the 4th member.
And what are their
when we accepted.
responsibilities?
Their responsibilities are, they oversee the registrar of voters. The registrar of voters does the street listing,
Yep.
otherwise known as the city census. They register voters, of course.
Yep.
And sometimes people come in and they need proof of residency.
So we're gonna put another layer on top of that to oversee?
No, they become the office for they become the election commission.
And it's
There
all
is
strictly-
no
it's
more
all-
registrar
So it becomes,
voters.
it stays part-time work, is that what it is?
There is no, yes, the election commission itself will be part-time.
Yeah, my issue too is I don't see how that leaves your office and the appointees aren't done out of your office.
What's that?
I don't see how an elected official should do it. If any elected official is gonna appoint people, should come before this board.
They do have to. Oh, they do.
Well, so you're looking at it, it's just like having the library commission.
Right,
We
but they
appoint,
do have to, but the registrar of voters come before us.
Yeah, they do,
Come-
but now
come
they're
before
gonna
the
have
city
now,
council, too.
10 days of voting is gonna put a different look into the voting.
That's it exactly. And when you look at what's done in the clerk's office, you need someone to really,
I mean, where would the voting machine be? If there was one voting machine in the assistant clerk's office, probably, right?
probably in the clerk's office, or I would imagine they would take the Gavarian room for 10 days and set up a polling place there.
Yep.
Or if they had their own office, it would go there. It would go there. This is how it happens. The registrar of voters becomes the election commission. My spot is replaced, because presently I am a member of the registrar of voters. My spot gets replaced. So a new person comes in, which would have to be either an independent or a Republican. Then is their terms, and right now, all their terms are expired, so new people could go right in. And, but that's what happens, and the staff that's there now could handle everything. They would probably need a part-timer for the month of August, September, October, November, just as election time comes along. When we went over to Revere and saw how they do it in Revere, Councilor Hanlon and I, when it's run by the executive, and I know there's some, worried about an elected official being a judge, but all he's doing is appointing the members, and I mean, yeah, should the city council give a lot of scrutiny to who gets appointed? Absolutely, absolutely. It shouldn't just be a vote. It should go by the rules and have it sent to committee, and each one of those people, grilled, because you do want impartial people. You want people that you feel comfortable with. But when we went over there, when it's done by the executive, Ms. Colella, who is the head of the election commission over there, I mean, it's like you press a button, boom, polls are set up, everything's in order, everybody's hired. You know, right now with everything going on in the clerk's office, I make sure the police are there. I make sure there's 144 well, not anymore, 12 times, 96 workers. I make sure the ballots are correct. I have to order them, get a contract out with the people. I make sure that the little computer cards work. In fact, Mr. Marchant comes in and we test the machines a week ahead of time. You run 50 ballots through every single machine. During a state election, we run 50 in a primary, 50 Democrat, 50 Republican, and when the Green Rainbow was around, 25 Green Rainbow. That's by law. So we have to do half of those one night, half of those the next night. The amount of work that goes in when you open up that machine, is there enough ribbon in it? Is the roll big enough to print out the thing? Are they charged enough? I got to charge them for 24 hours. And it's basically a person. It's basically one person. And when you go down to the clerk's office, the best was this evening, the new assistant city clerk came in for a little bit of training, and this is a Monday night, and that counter was packed. And I said, the night before the election, that counter is no different. People are still coming in to get birth certificates, death certificates. We got to work with we took on the burial permits, which the clerk's office didn't do before. We took on they're coming in for burial permits. They're coming in for, you name it, you're renewing their licenses for, second-class motor or whatever. That's the night before an election. It's not like you can shut down and go run an election. On the other side of that, too, is there are things that should be done to encourage voting. There should be things out there to encourage voter registration. And I said it before, when that election's over, I'm back to being a clerk, and I've got to catch up on everything I've missed from the election. And those things have fallen by the wayside, And I'll do this quickly, and Councilor Hanna and I were talking about it the other day. In the old days, you took the big machine and you rolled it out. A guy went in the back and he set the thing so that the votes all registered. There was no electricity, no voting booth, no ballot. I mean, there was no such thing as inactive voters back then. There was no such thing as having to have a form for inactive voters. And now you've got to give them a training thing like this. All those papers have to be reproduced, and you can't use the same instructions for a primary as you do for a preliminary or for a primary and a general election. All this material's got to be prepared. All that falls on one person. And I say one person, meaning my staff as well, but they're at the counter all day. Meanwhile, they have reports they have to do to the state for birth, death, marriage. The amount of, with the different cultures now, the amount of amendments that we're making to marriage certificates and birth certificates because the use of last names is different. Now we have to tell you, oh no, you got to go get me something that proves that this is really your name, and it's not your father's election anymore. It just isn't. And now 10 days of early voting. It's going to take 2 weeks away. That's 2 more solid weeks of voting that's going to go right in. Now some folks say, oh, well, that's only a couple of times a year. And thank God the same-day registration isn't coming for a while. Thank goodness. That one hasn't been approved yet, but it is still on the table. But, since 2006, we've run 31 elections. 7 in 2013. How do you do your job? This can't be a side job anymore. It's not a side job. It's not one of your duties. It's got to be somebody's responsibility. And it says, well, 2013 was an exception. No. In 2010, there were 5 elections. So every so often you get all these elections in one year, and it really needs to be somebody's position, what would they do? They wouldn't just do elections. They'd do all the functions of the registrar of voters. They would run the elections, which my office does now. They would handle all campaign finance thing, which my office handles now, which changed, by the way. And now anyone who makes over $1,000, you have raises or spends over $1,000, never existed before, but now you have to make sure those things are published on the internet. So they would have to do that as well. And so they do campaign finance, they'd run the elections, and do the registrar of voters, and you already have a registrar of voters office. So that office doesn't change year-round. It's the same two people. It's just election time, you'd probably bring in a part-timer. And yes, you would have to grill that. You'd have to be really comfortable with who you appointed. I mean, you'd have to make sure that they were appointees that in your heart were, you know, beyond reproach. You know, the registrar of voters now are pretty good, and, you know, they're pretty up and up, but you'd have to be confident in them.
Mike, what are we looking at for money? Look at $100,000 a year
For what?
salaries for all these people?
No.
being hired?
No,
What
the
are we
board,
looking
the
at?
board right now makes $1,200 a year, I want to say.
What, a piece?
Yeah. You would probably want to up that. If you're going to have them be election commission, you probably.
Yep.
It's a pretty responsible position. If you want to get good people, you probably would want to give them $5,000 to $7,500. Other than that, you're hiring a part-time person for 2 months. Well, 4 months total in the year, I would say. And that's what the registrar of voters used to do. We took them in when that person was done away with. We took them into my office. But I don't want to make them feel like orphans, but, you know, we took them in, but we always had that person. It's just when that person retired, they never filled it. No, they took the early retirement, so they couldn't fill it.
Yep.
And so we took them in. And so you're really not talking an increase in expenses or anything else. City services would still set up the polls. Only difference now is I physically go and set up with 2 city service workers. I mean, they would learn how to do it and just go and do it. And it's different when that's coming down from the executive. I know. And as I said to him this evening, I said, look at that counter. That's what it's like an election night. You know, you can't close the office because you're running an election. You can't close the office and then the next morning, you're out taking the polls down. And then that night, you're clerk of the council. Because there's a meeting that very next night. And then the election's out of my head. When somebody really should be there, out there, encouraging people to vote and having a banner down the square and, you know, that should be their focus. And quite frankly, my focus is somebody doing an illegal truck repair down on Factory Street. You know, somebody doing an ordinance that needs to be written, you know, things like that, so.
Anyway, Michael, some of the things I just want to let that Mike has just forgotten about, as far as elections are concerned, the signatures that you have to collect, you know, when we go out with our nomination papers, that all goes through that office.
That's the registrar's, right.
It would go through
I'm
them.
sorry, yeah, that's the registrar's as
Other
well.
things that I know that, you know, he talks about all these things that he has to get done, and he's not coming up with them. You know, every single commission and every single committee that's in this city has got to file a report with him, and he has to maintain those records. We have graves registration that runs through that department that he has to keep control of, and those are records. We countless number of records that he keeps downstairs. If you go into his vault, I mean, you'll see there's just stacks and stacks of books from day one. We still have the first meeting this city has ever had, and it's in there, it's in records, so you have to keep them all. He has an archives downstairs, and I mean, in the lower basement, he has to keep that. That's a big job too. Vault storage, and they have to do research. Research is a big part of their job. Someone comes in, they want to know, you know, where did my grandfather come from? Where was my mother born, and stuff like that. You just don't open a book and say, oh, there it is right there. You have to do, when was she born? You have to do a lot of research. So you can spend a couple of hours on a person, and that takes a person away from something, you know. Even if you say to the person, listen, I can't do it right now, just give me the information. we'll get it, we'll mail it to you. You still gotta spend that couple of hours on research. So there's a lot more stuff that goes on in that office that it just happens. And I said before that the name municipal clerks, which includes cities, is mentioned in the Massachusetts general laws more than 2,000 times. And the clerk shall, that's what it says, and whatever the law is that they're talking about. It's just all over the place, and I think I know like 700 of them. Where the other 1,300 are, I haven't run across them yet, but that's you. And every day someone will walk in and say, you're supposed to be doing this since when? Yeah, since 2002 it started, and nobody tells us, so you don't know. Oh, anyway.
If I may, Mr. President, and I'll be brief, I don't take this lightly. You know what I mean? That no one ever likes to have, quote, authority and give it to somebody else. But this is bad. I mean, people going to vote has gone down and down and down and down. You really need someone that's their focus. Their focus is registering people, running the elections, doing the street listing, making sure the campaign reports are all in order, everything else. You need someone that's their focus. And right now, it's my focus from now till November. And after November, I won't give it a second thought. I can't. We've got the inauguration coming up, and then there's another one coming in March in the presidential primary, which I wouldn't expect this to take any effect till after that. But there's a presidential primary coming. There's, the codification of the ordinances. We just signed a contract with a company that's going to put our ordinances in order and put them online that they're searchable like the other communities have, and things like all this stuff. The charter alone, other than the city council and the mayor, the city clerk's mentioned the most times, 80 times. There's all these duties. Again, real quick, everyone who takes the ethics exam, I have to keep track of that. Why it's not human resources? Well, because when they wrote the state law, not every community has human resources, the small towns. But what do they have? They got a clerk. So they made it the clerk that has to. Open meeting law, boom, campaign finance reports. All that stuff just keeps coming down the pike. Every time you turn around, the state passes something new, and it's the clerk's responsibility. And I don't mind. It's just that I think we're getting shortchanged on the election end of it. I mean, it really ought to be somebody's passion and enthusiasm to go out there and really do this and do it the right way. That's what I think.
Council Simonelli?
Thank you, Mr. President, due to the clerk, Mike Lorenzo. Now, I don't get this clear now. The hiring practices of these people, are you gonna be doing the hiring?
No, the full-time people already exist. It's the Registrar of Voters Office.
No, but the new people you're hiring for this commission,
The commission would be appointed by the mayor with the approval of the city council.
by the mayor. And what would happen if the person getting hired, he's got a city job?
Yeah.
And would he get double pay?
No, you couldn't. Our charter prohibits that.
So a city worker or elected official can't have it?
No, cannot.
All right, that's what I like.
Okay, no,
Thank you.
cannot. No.
Is there a motion?
We need more research in that. I mean, there's only 3 of us voting on the thing tonight. I mean,
Yeah.
Are you motioning for more, for
I mean, if we need, if that's what we need.
This would not happen till after the presidential primary. There is no hurry.
Oh, there's no, okay. Well,
So I'll entertain a motion for further time.
Yeah, and I'll provide more info, more written
that's
info.
about it, yeah.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we have adjourned.
All right, Mike, John.
What's going on there tonight?